So Kyle, go ahead and tell everybody again what you've been doing, and we're so glad to have you back and glad that you are willing to share some stats with us.
Yeah, so guys, thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking to you guys and getting the insights, seeing the insights you guys have as well. So I always kind of start with the MLS data, and this is a snapshot of December 31st, and really shows us a little bit of the things. So 99.7% of the percentage of original price to price received. So almost everything's selling for full price, and that's up just a little bit.
Hey, Kyle.
26 days on market, 0.8 months supply as of December. That's down 38.5%. Average sales price is up 10.8% from last December. So that's our appreciation. That's the 10.8%. And then our total inventory, pending sales up just a bit. Closed sales were down for December. Just kind of generic stats there. What we hear a lot though is there's no listings. Has your realtor told you that there's no listings? That's not actually true. There's a difference between listings and inventory. Listings are the number of houses that actually go for sale each year, each month. The inventory is what's active at a snapshot in time. So on December 31st, there was 2,500 listings active, and we had sold 3,000 to get that 0.8% inventory. But as we start to look at these numbers here, you can see the monthly ones, 2019, 2020, you see the big drop in 2020, and a really random drop in August of new listings. So these are all the residential new listings, actually commercial and everything. So these are the new listings. And if you look for most of the year until August, 2020 or 2019 and 2022 were almost identical. We ended up just a little bit short, and I can't really zoom in on that, but my next charts will show that. We ended up right in between for 2021, right in between 2020 and 2019 for the actual number of listings. So when your agent says there's no listings, that's not really true. They just are selling super fast. We have low interest rates, which are starting to rise, which means that people are more qualified. Somebody that was qualified for a $250,000 house 4 years ago can now qualify for a $300,000 house because the interest rates mean their debt to income and what they can afford to pay are exactly the same. And so the truth is there aren't very many listings for sale, but there's the same number of houses for sale as there's been for about the last 3 years. And as we start to go through some of these numbers here, this is our listing volume. So this is where we get the appreciation. There was $17 billion of listings in 2021 compared to $15 billion in 2020 and just over $15 billion in 2019. So as we start to look at these, we're getting the same number of listings and even a few less than 2019, but they're listing for a lot higher percentage of time there. We look at the listings by type. So I broke this out, and you'll see my 56,000 right there for 2019, but there were 50,000 residential listings, 50,605, 48,805, and 48,744 for 2021. So
hold on just a quick second, Kyle. I think, is everybody seeing that clearly? I don't know if everybody's seeing that clearly. Does everybody see it clearly? Do thumbs up if you can see it clearly, sideways if you can't.
It's pretty small right now. Let me see if I can get it moved. So the next graphs are a little bit bigger. So there we go. Okay. This is the same similar thing to what Michelle showed a little bit earlier. Wasn't sure if she was going to have that. But right now, this is by listing year. And then the total is the grand total. So 2684, that's the total listings. We've had 122,000 listings sell over the last 3 years, and already 119 listings that listed in 2021 have closed. So I think it might be your internet, Michelle. So we also can see there's 789 listings that listed in 2022 already under contract, and only 723 active out of those totals. are still active that have been on the market since 2019. Most likely that's going to be some of the land stuff and some of the luxury stuff. But we start to see there's 44 from 2020, and we see the number sold. This will jump up a little bit more as we finish off these under contract ones. So there's almost 5,000 homes under contract. This will jump up to about 42,000 homes that actually sold in 2021. So like I keep saying, there's not really a listing issue. It's more of a qualified buyers. We just have more qualified buyers for higher priced homes that sell. And then one of the things I always look at is the HUD listings, because as investors, we like to be able to look at, we like to get those deals, right? And a lot of times those foreclosures were the deals. And so as you're here, we get to 2008 and there was 5,600, and then dropped down because the government stepped in, right? And said, don't foreclose on anything. Hey, hold on, we've got all these issues. The chain of title book, right? Where there's all these title issues with trying to get things foreclosed. So 2009, 2010 started to have a little bit of an issue there. And then we jumped up 2011, 2012, 2013, right here, 2012 is when I got my real estate license. There was 3 times as many foreclosure listings as we have active listings right now. And that was about 25 to 20% of the total listings in that particular year. And then slowly started to drop down to 2021. There was only 225 total HUD listings or foreclosure listings, FHA, HUD, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, bank owned. That's part of why there's not nearly as many active listings. Is sometimes these will sit on the market for 30 or 45 days because they would overprice them. But now even if they overprice them, it's not really a big impact. It's 20 listings a month instead of, what's that, 600 a month, 700 a month. So part of our lack of inventory per se isn't necessarily the lack of listings. It's just that the listings aren't getting overpriced, and the market drives those particular things. So so kind of a little bit of overview of 2021 and a little history there. Any questions on our local market? Awesome. So the next website I want to go to is the Federal Housing and Finance Agency. And they do what's called a house price index. And each quarter or each month, they kind of update it. They also do a quarterly one, and they work with the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and work with they track the loans that have been given out. And so they do a bunch of reports. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. I wanted to show you guys the home price index. And this started in 1991. In 1991, the home price index was 100. So 100 is the base. We say that's $100,000. To get to 200, the home price index would need to be $200,000. And so this is Kansas on the top. And we'll see in 2007, we got really close to doubling that 1991 price. So we get there and we get just short of that, and we just sneak over it in Missouri. But then it drops down all the way to 174 in 2011. So we lost about 10 to 12% of the home value in those 4 years. And then it starts to go up and starts to go up. And in 2021, we reached 300, which means the price from 1991 to 2021 is triple the price that's getting used. But if we kind of do a trend back here and we just follow along and we don't go up on the peak there, and we just kind of follow that same upward trend, we're just now getting back to that trend value that where we should have been had we not had the Great Recession. Kansas has jumped up a little bit more. And then we can even go down to Kansas City. And here's where we really see some drastic numbers. So we got to 200 in 2006, 2007. So it took us, 16 years to double. And then it only took us 14 years to double again, along with a great recession in there. Here we see a little bit more. We kind of do that trend. We're up a little bit higher, and we're seeing really drastic stuff. But we really got to that triple spot at the end of 2020. So a ton of price increases. So when you hear something about appreciation and, hey, I'm buying, hoping the home values go up, besides 2008, 2009, 2010, you could almost guarantee that if you bought at any particular time since 1990, your house value would go up any particular year. And even if you bought in 2007 and waited 10 years, your home value probably would have gone up, actually 6 years, 8 years, because we get back to that peak about 8 years after the value. So buying on appreciation is almost always a good thing, right? So this is a great thing here, to be able to see where appreciation happens, how much it's appreciated, and being able to go and really get some great data. I'm going to come back to the Fhfa here a little bit later, where we can. I'm going to show you some other tips and tricks here with their website. But let's go to the KCRIR site. So I went to kcrir.com. You guys can, and this is public. I'm not logged in as a realtor here. Nothing special here. They've got a market report, and the market report can show you lots of fun things here. So when we click on the market report, it's got market statistics for each different county, and we can even go back all the way to October 2014 and see the same thing. So let's do Jackson County today. So we're going to select Jackson County up here, and we're going to look at the most recent one and view a report. And we get a nice little report here. I can zoom in on this that allows us to see a little bit of what's happening in the market. So taking that full market numbers and breaking them down a little bit for key areas that we're going to work in. So we can see that closed sales down 6% in December in Jackson County, but the price was up 6.2%. So 6.2% appreciation. The average sales price here was $258,000. The median sales price went up. The days on market went down. Our inventory went down 30% because on December 31st, there was 929 houses for sale, and we sold 1,040. That's 0.8%. Last year was 1.3. We sold just almost, not a 6% difference in houses that actually sold, but we just didn't have as many active houses to start with. And then you can see that in the same graph area, and kind of a historical trend here. Even going back to 2011, we started to see a little down, but since 2011 and really starting in the middle of 2020, we started to see a huge increase in prices in Jackson County. We can also go back and be like, all right, let's go all the way back to October in Jackson County. And zoom in a bit there. What I say, there was 900 active homes right now. And in October 2014, there was 4,000. So in 7 years, we've lost 3/4 of our active inventory. We also sold 300 more homes. And so kind of cool to be able to go back and be like, all right, maybe I'm looking at a house and I'm wondering what the market was in 2014, because I'm planning on holding it for 7 years. I'm like, oh, the average sales price was $150,000. Right now. So really easy to come back and jump in and see some of these different things and go back. The other couple of things I like to show on this page is the housing forecast. So Wichita State, every year, Wichita State has a school for real estate, or a center for real estate data, and they do a housing forecast. And so they take all the MLS data, all the the Kansas Association of Realtors, the MLSs have all agreed to give Wichita State their data so that there's one resource for the state of Kansas that can provide great insight for the whole state, but they also break it down into areas. So the Kansas City forecast is actually for the entire city. So when we click on that, it's going to open up here, and it takes us for the Center for Real Estate. They've got some market forecast here for all the different areas. So if you're wanting to buy in Lawrence, you can actually see the Lawrence one, Manhattan, Topeka, Wichita. They kind of cover the main ones along with an entire Kansas forecast. And they even do some for specific counties. So if you're looking to be to work with in Lawrence and buy rentals and rent to Kansas or to college students, you can get an idea of the market really quickly from their websites, realestate.wichita.edu, without having to talk to a realtor, find other stuff. It's a great resource to be able to see those things. So when we open up the Kansas City one, go full page here, zoom out just a bit. So a fun little opening page there. Go to next page. There we go. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. Tells us a little bit more about the sponsors, and Dr. Langhofer runs the Center for Real Estate. He comes and speaks to a lot of different people, a lot of different places, and even puts a lot of those presentations online. I'll show you that in a second. So here's our economic overview, our unemployment rates, our employment losses. So even though we haven't quite got back to 2020 numbers, we're seeing steady growth, and we're seeing that unemployment number go down. And this is a snapshot in time of about October, November. One of the next things I'm going to show you guys is how to kind of track this stuff yourself. Don't just trust what you're hearing on the news about what's happening. Actually go and look. So we're seeing our mortgage rates here, and we saw them creep up a little bit in 2021, but still way lower than 2016. And then they'll project out a little bit there. Our home sales activity for the state of for the Kansas City area, once again, they're projecting almost 46,000, 47,000 homes. Zoom in. I always try and use my my shortcut codes on my keyboard, and sometimes they don't work quite so well. So we can see here that the U.S. is projecting a small decline in sales, but the Kansas City area is expecting to grow and sell about 2,000 more homes in all of 2022. Same thing for new homes. So a lot of our growth is going to come from 1,600 additional new homes. And if you guys have listened to some of the stuff I've presented before, one of the other reasons besides the foreclosure listings, there's not as many new home constructions. So a lot of home builders got wiped out in 2007, 2008, 2009. They're a lot more cautious with what they're building. They're not going to start some houses until they actually have a contract. Some of them, because of the lumber supply issues earlier this year, they're not putting anything on the market until they're in the trim phase where they've got their full prices. And so we're not seeing some of these listings until they're under contract right away, which doesn't help that inventory number. It helps the listings sold and the number of listings, but it doesn't help that inventory because they go active and they go right to under contract. But we're expecting to see a few more homes sell here in new homes sell in 2022. And we can see the difference in price here. So months supply of inventory. We see the green has started to trick up with under 150,000 in the supply. We see the orange drop drastically. There wasn't nearly as many homes priced for under 500,000, but everything's slowly starting to move up just a little bit, which is a sign of the possibility that we're going to get a little bit more towards a balanced market. Probably not to the complete balanced market where we have a 3 to 6 month supply of inventory, but for you guys, would it be easier if there was a 2 month supply to find something that you could invest in or buy as a rental? Probably most likely. That's going to help you guys without having to compete against 20 offers just to get something that goes for 30,000 over the list price, right? We can see the Kansas housing market. They're expecting numbers to go up there as well. You see that a lot of the sales happen in Kansas City. So 48,000 sales here for home sales. And in Kansas, in Kansas City, we had, what was the projected number? 46,000 of those. So we'll have to check that. And again, the ranges and the appreciation. They're expecting appreciation of 10.5%. And then they do some trend stuff here. So the Kansas estimated there of home sales. And then you see our trend that we're selling more houses every year, and we're actually putting more home permits on every year. And our appreciation's been pretty steady every year, except for 2021. And they're projecting about a 9.2% appreciation per year. I'd take 10% return on my investment every day, right? Especially because a lot of times we buy with loans. So we leverage that out and we buy a $200,000 house and put 40,000 down. And now our house is worth 220,000. Our cash on cash return, if we sell it right away, pretending there's no other cost with that, is a 50% return on our cash. That's the cool thing about the leveraging in loans, and especially if it's a rental, right? Somebody else made our house payments. We had cash flow on top of that. And in a year, we've got 50% return, which allows you, if you buy something and decide that you don't want it anymore, you have another opportunity. That 10%, 12% interest or appreciation really allows you to have some options to sell and get back your money and be able to get those that money back to invest in something different and do a 1031 exchange and do some fun stuff like that. So you can see the other areas here, and then the sponsors there. Any questions on the report here? Like I said, I got to this just going to the KCIR stats report. But you can see here on he's got the forecast, he's got presentations and speeches. So he goes around and speeches, presents at different places. And then he throws his presentation up on here. So here's the Wichita housing forecast. If we hit the next page, we'll see the Lawrence Board of Realtors, Pittsburgh. He did a Kansas one at the Kansas Association of Realtors. So there's a lot of fun things on here to just kind of dive into. You can even look directly at all the data. So he has that same home appreciation data. I actually didn't get it from him. I got it from my own research, but he just verified I know what I'm talking about, right? And then he's got some of the MLS statistics here, and he has them in Excel spreadsheets. If you're kind of nerdy like me and want to do your own charts and graphs, you can come grab some stuff here. Here's his residential construction. Dig even deeper into some of the numbers here. So the next thing I want to show you guys is we're going to go back to that FHFA website. So it's FHFA.gov, and this is really about finance and Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. They talk about the conforming loan limits. You can now buy a house for 3.5% down in Kansas City for $647,200. You can get an FHA loan for that, so you can add in 3.5%. So almost $675,000 house, you can get a 3.5% down FHA backed loan. So quick question for you guys, hop in and answer. Does this kind of feel like the loan limits are getting really high with not much skin in the game? Kind of a la 2004, 5, 6. Anybody think that might be the case happening here again with loans?
Well, it kind of feels a little bit that way when you talk about it from that perspective. Yeah.
So it's not quite that bad because they aren't doing the no documentation loans. They actually are still very strict on who gets the loans and the you have to have a certain credit score, where before it used to be like 500, you could get a loan, right? I think FHA, the minimum is 640 now, and the fuel will go down to 600, but they have to put more down on that. So not quite the same, but there is they have increased. It was 480,000 about 2 years ago. So they've increased this a lot really quickly to be able to do that. In other areas of the country, some of the California cities can get loans up to $1 million because they're high cost areas with just 3.5% down. But yeah, it's an interesting question to say, hey, are we giving money away too easily because of the low interest rates and raising these loan limits for not having to qualify for a conventional loan or put 10 or 20% down?
Well, I was hoping Ron, I don't think Ron's on here. I'd like to hear what he said, but I believe he always says that the problem years ago was they were doing non-QM loans or something like that, where they weren't like more like you're talking about, where they weren't really qualifying anybody. So he says the protection we have this year is not so much now is that it's not so much the limits, it's the fact that they're making it stricter and you have to qualify, which is going to hopefully protect against that. Yeah, that's the way I understand it anyways.
That's kind of the way I see it. We might see an uptick in a couple of years of foreclosures with 3.5% down if home values don't keep rising, because people are buying expensive houses, $500,000 houses with 3.5% down. And if appreciation stops and they have to sell, they won't have the equity to really sell. Or if there's any sort of dip and they have to sell, they're just not going to have the equity to sell because they're not putting as much down on these higher end houses. So I like this website. There's a lot of things here, but I really like the data and tools. So when I click on data and tools at the top and I go over to tools, they've got a lot of different graphs here. So you can see where Kansas City ranks in the top 100 metro areas based on appreciation. So we start here, and Boise for the fourth quarter here was year over year 37% increase. Cape Coral, Fort Myers, 34%, Austin, Round Rock. We start to scroll through, and up until the fourth quarter, Kansas City was in the top 15. Now we are down towards the bottom. It's here somewhere. There it is, 78. And if you actually click on the city, oops, too many buttons here. 78. So we went from the top 20 down to 78, and our appreciation was 14.2% year over year, and starting to slow down. That it was just 1.8% in, I think this is the fourth quarter or third quarter. So this is the third quarter. The fourth quarter stats will come out next week. So we've started to slow down, and if we took this times 4, we'd only end up with about 7.5 to 8% appreciation for 2022. We've started to see Charleston has a negative appreciation. We've got down a little bit farther, Wichita with that same 1.8, and St. Louis was in here somewhere there. St. Louis at 88 at 13%. But even to make the top 100, everything is at least a 10% appreciation. And then we zoom into Kansas City a little bit here, and we can see the kind of similar stats to our MLS numbers, where we can see some cumulative changes since 2007. Our prices have gone up almost 70%, and that includes the dip right here. So the lowest spot here was a 20% decrease. 21.1% decrease in prices from 2007 to 2011. We can also see year over year changes. So that's the US change. So Kansas City is actually tracking behind the US average and the quarterly average there. But some of those, Boise's pulling that number up. Some of these other places are pulling that number up. And then you even see the year over year trends. So obviously we know what happened there. And we started shooting up in the third quarter of last year. These are pretty normal, 6-7% per year. But then we started in quarter three, 11.5, 10, 15, 17, 14% rates. And part of that's attributed to COVID, that people were starting to realize they lived in an apartment and they were tired of people, right? They needed more space because everybody was staying at home. So there's more demand on housing. People were realizing that their house was too small and they were going to probably be working from home for the rest of their career at that particular job, right? And they didn't have a home office space. And so we started to see that demand really increase third, fourth quarter as people started to, I don't like the term, the new reality, or the whatever they use, but they started to come to the conclusion that COVID's not going away and we need to buy more houses, or we need more space. The government stimulus checks started to kick in right here, where people could, a couple got what, $3,000 each in 2020, something like that. That alone, if they had no other savings, was enough to trigger to have a 3.5% down payment on a house, along with their other savings. So all of a sudden, if they didn't need the government stimulus, they had money to put towards a down payment and add to their down payment and jumpstart that. Maybe they were going to buy in 2022 and they were saving $500 a month to buy in 2022. All of a sudden they have $6,000 to $8,000. And if they had kids, they had more, right? They had this $6,000 to $8,000 to $10,000 windfall that allowed them to have the down payment money, or have more down payment money to buy a bigger house, or pay off debt to get a higher debt to income to be able to afford to buy that house. So we can start to see that. And we started to see quarter three that started to drop down, as we haven't had a stimulus check since the beginning of the year, right? That I remember. So it'll be interesting to see as this drops. But we can also see up here that cumulative change for the US. So we've definitely outpaced the US all the time on our interest rate there. So you can go back and choose different comparisons. So we could compare Kansas City to St. Louis. Hey, I'm deciding where to invest. Which one's going to have a better appreciation? And right now, Kansas City definitely outpaces St. Louis since 2007 with a 40% compared to a 70% increase there. So sorry if you're a St. Louis person, you're not getting the appreciation, but you can start to see really easily the differences between some of the communities here in that you might invest in. Couple of other ones that I like on these charts. You can see the conforming map. You can see actually a map of the appreciation and that home price index. So you can even zoom in and see based on the entire United States, or let's just jump to Missouri. And we can pick by county and see that home price index since 1990, since last year, and even break that statewide one down into counties that we want to invest in. I'm a big fan of Nottoway County. It's home of the Northwest Missouri State Bearcats. I'm an alum there. We're considering investing in Nottoway County because it's a great college town. On average, you're going to get 3.1% compared to investing in Jackson County, where you get 6.3%. But if you have a 3-bedroom house in Maryville, the actual cost is a lot less. I thought you were on, David. That's kind of why I made a little comment there on St. Louis. I was seeing if you were paying attention. In college towns, you could rent out a 4-bedroom house for $250 per student, and if you rented it to a family, you're only going to get $600. And there's not quite the demand in Pittsburgh, Kansas, or Maryville, Missouri, or Warrensburg, Missouri, as there are with maybe in Kansas City. And so college towns are an opportunity to do some investing and get those Airbnb returns, because college students will jump together and have 2 or 3, 4 people in a house and split that higher rent, a little bit higher rent than they would with than getting just a single family to rent something out. The MLS actually covers pretty much, it covers Warrensburg, Maryville, Pittsburgh, not Emporia yet, but a lot of those small college towns that you could have your realtor. If you're not a realtor, you can have your realtor do searches in those and just start to do some comparison stuff with that. And it's an hour and a half drive to any of those around. Warrensburg's here in, I think it's in, where's Warrensburg? Probably in Johnson County. That if you're looking for rentals outside of the metro to have a good return, that's actually a pretty decent spot there. The last one I want to show you guys here is the Fhfa Hpi Calculator. And does somebody want to, we'll do Kansas, does somebody want to tell me when they bought their house? What year? Anybody?
My current house was 2004.
So, and do you remember, did you buy it in the first, second, third quarter, fourth quarter? It's not a big deal, but
September, third quarter.
So we'll do September, and then we won't actually ask you your what you bought it for. We're just going to pretend you bought it for $150,000.
Okay.
And so I put in when I bought it, when I want to value it, and I put a price there, and it goes and takes that those average changes in price and gives you an approximate value of that house. So $150,000 house bought in the third quarter of 2004. In the third quarter of 2021, it's estimated based on the appreciation rates at $273,000. So I'm going to go in and I found a non-owner occupied house, and I can look at the tax records and know when they bought it, and I can plug that in here and say, get a ballpark idea of what that house is valued at today. So I don't have to go, and then I verify that with comps. And so it comes in and the seller goes, well, my house is worth $325,000. You can have some data that goes, well, according to the average appreciation in Kansas City, your house is actually worth, and when you bought it, your house is worth $273,000 based on that average appreciation. If they say it's worth $250,000, you go, great, I think you're right. And then you run your comps, but it gives you an idea of what the approximate value is based on that appreciation, rather than having to run comps every time. It's a quick valuation of, hey, this house and what they bought it in similar condition, I now have a decent value of what that's at. So not a bad return, Michelle, if you bought your house for $150,000 and have been making payments, right?
Yeah.
82%. So I kind of like that as a quick, hey, what that home might be valued at, because I can do it quickly. I don't need to get a realtor involved. I can be like, oh, they're being totally ridiculous if they think that their home's worth $500,000. They bought it in the third quarter of 2004, unless something seriously happened in that neighborhood, or they bought it ridiculously cheap. There's not, the numbers just don't make that much sense, right? But you also run your comps and do stuff there. So, any questions on the Fair Housing or Federal Housing Finance Agency website? They even have mortgage stuff there. But yeah, I think there's a few cool graphs there, and I like this calculator just as a quick way to say, just get an idea of what the value is of what they bought it at and just the average appreciation. So the last thing I want to show you guys is the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So our unemployment rate, our payroll, our average hourly earnings, inflation, all that impacts how much we can pay for houses, right? And so I'm just on it's bls.gov. And then down here, I can select the Mountain West. So our Mountain Plains, this is our region. And when I click on that, I can even break stuff down by state. So I can click Kansas and Missouri, kind of get the same stuff. For Kansas, it breaks it out by cities and gives us some of the full Kansas stuff. But I really like to dig down to locals. So here's the Kansas City stats. And a lot of it's been updated in 2021. But there's this economic summary. And this was just updated, I think, about 3 days ago. And so when I click that, we start to see our unemployment rates. So we start to see, all right, do we have jobs? Do we not have jobs? And I like this one. So the average weekly wages. We start to see where people aren't making nearly as much money. And so Leavenworth, they're not making as much as people do in Wyandotte, Johnson, Jackson, Clay on average. We can see our changes in unemployment. We can see our unemployment based on other different things. And then we can come down and see our prices paid by consumers for selected categories. So this is inflation. 7.6% for the West North Central. That's our like 6-state region. The average is there. That's for everything. Our food prices are up about 6.5%, and our energy's up 36%, mostly fuel. We won't get into politics on fuel and stuff like that. But we can start to see why goods are costing more, because the price received by producers for trucking is up 20% compared to the year before. And so we start to get some fun stuff here, and then we can start to see some average wages. In Kansas City, the average wage is about $26 an hour, which equates to $52,000. And we can see the average expenditures here, that on average in the Midwest, somebody's going to spend $19,268 on housing. They're going to spend $10,000 on transportation, $6,000 on food, $6,900 on food. And compared to the US, our housing is less expensive. We pay a little bit more for transportation. We pay a little bit less for food. We pay a little bit less for insurance. We pay a little bit more, about $600 more for insurance. And then everything else equates out to about the same. So we can now, if somebody's like, oh, I'm thinking about moving to Kansas City, yeah, it's great. Our housing costs a lot less than it does across the whole United States. And then we can see the employer costs. So on average, the wages and salaries are $23, but the employer pays almost over $10 extra for all these other benefits. So just because somebody says they're making $23 an hour doesn't mean that's actually what the business is paying for that employee. And you see that those are starting to creep up there. But our West Central here on September 21, our wages and salaries was up 4%, but we're paying 6% more for food. So now a bigger percentage of our income is going to food, and a bigger percentage overall of all of our expenses, 7.6% of our expenses have gone up 7.6%, but we've only increased our pay 4%. So at some point, if this doesn't get even with house prices, so our wages went up 4% and we're paying 14% more for houses, at some point that just has to stop. The price of houses can't continue to go up if wages don't continue to go up as well, because people just won't be able to afford them, or they'll start making lower offers. So lots of fun stuff there. The other one I just kind of take a quick glance at is the area employment. Actually, that wasn't the one I wanted. Labor force statistics. And so in the Midwest, we can look and see the number of people actually working. And in December of 2020, there was 1,518,400 labor force, people that were looking for jobs, had jobs, that were there. And that's dropped down to 1.5 million, which now means there's 17,000 less people looking for jobs, which means that the unemployment rate goes down, because people that aren't looking for jobs or aren't in the labor market no longer are part of this number of the actual people looking. Across the United States, it's gone up. Let's find Missouri here. Missouri has gone up just a little bit, but people in Kansas, there's about 18,000 people that have stopped looking for jobs, moved out of the state for other opportunities, that our labor force has actually gone down. I think that's the last one I wanted. So same thing in Kansas here. The employees that are actually working have gone up, but the total number of people actually looking for jobs has gone down. So 34,000 our unemployment rate for November, 17,000 people have less people have found jobs. So just kind of taking some of these things and taking a quick look at them every 3 to 6 months can help you know what's really happening in the different places that you're investing in, rather than doing everything all at relying on just resources. You can start to see some trends and start to be like, hey, I can use this resource to identify a hot area, or to actually talk knowledgeably about the market, to say, if you're considering purchasing a house and the client goes, I don't really have anywhere to move to if I sell to you. You can go, well, there's still the same number of houses for sale and selling. There's just a little bit more competition for that. So we could, there's houses for sale. You don't have to, the news is always going to say that inventory, that it's terrible, there's no houses for sale. But when you go back and look at the actual numbers, like, well, there's the same number for sale. We sold the same number of houses last year as we did in 2020. It's not that there's not houses for sale and there's houses selling, they're just selling quicker. And so you just have to be prepared. And I'm flexible on my closing time. So if we need to move it a week or 2 weeks based on your home search, I'm willing to do that for a cost, right? It's going to cost you, I'm only going to pay $500 less to give you that extension. But knowing the numbers and knowing how you can encourage people to sell a house will help you to say, hey, there's houses out there. It's just that they sell fast. So we can work with you, and literally I could close, rent it back to you while you do your home search and make rental income, and then go in and flip it after they move out, after they find their house, and give them up to 6 months to find a house, have an agreement with them, and tell them, hey, this will give you an advantage when you're looking at a house, is if you need to sell this one to buy that one, you're already going to have the funds, because we're going to close, I'm going to rent it back to you, and you're going to be able to go in and make a strong offer that's not contingent upon you selling this house, because you've already sold it to me. So that's what I have today, guys. Any questions?
I think they're still absorbing everything that you said.
Hey, Kyle, it's
Yeah.
David. That was an excellent presentation. I really like your perspective of the quantity of homes sold, because I do focus in on inventory, and I think that does play a part in supply and demand. But are we really in any kind of bubble if really the number of homes hasn't really increased? So it's not like we can flood the market. There's no more homes being sold than there are the last 3 years with it. So I think that's kind of encouraging to know that as long as inventory stays low, the buyer thinks he's got to buy it quickly, so us rehabbers can sell. But in reality, there's no flooding of the market with homes. It's the same quantity that's selling each year for the past 3 years. So I think that was an excellent point you made.
Yep. And there's not a lack of homes for sale. There's just a lack of active homes for sale. What else you guys have?
I heard a guy yesterday ask about foreclosures, and we've talked about it in here. What do you see for foreclosures? You think that we're going to get a wave, or with the amount of equity people are having and stuff, is that going to ever be an option to purchase?
I don't think there's going to be a ton, because house prices have gone up so much everywhere. The foreclosures are going to be the ones that people bought and trashed and have no value there, and they just walk away. The banks are going to probably price them at a fair market value, because they the fair market value is 225,000 and the loan's only for 150, they could, if somebody wants to buy it for 225, they're going to get $75,000 of profit. Otherwise, they're going to get it back. They can put it on the market for 200 and still make $50,000. So I think there'll be foreclosures, but I think they might be priced so high that they're not going to be valuable for investors. And with the equity, there's just not going to be nearly as many that the sellers can, people that are in trouble, they lose their job and need to sell, or are moving and need to sell. Whatever it is, they have enough equity built up. And you could buy a house last year and at 14% equity, still pay the realtor fees and associated cost and still come out with some cash ahead. So I don't see a big influx of those. The ones that might be are the ones that did the forbearances, and all of a sudden at the end of that forbearance, they have a lump sum of $20,000 due, and they just put their head in the sand and don't do anything, and the bank forecloses. But even those, even with that, they should be able to have enough equity to be able to sell, or the bank will short.
Hey, Kyle, it's David. So I follow those statistics from Black Knight really closely. So a couple things are happening with it. One, is that, even if they did suddenly put them all on the market, we'd only have enough homes to have 2 months of inventory. So even if you waved a magic wand, it wouldn't change anything. But here's the bigger issue. The banks are not staffed to foreclose. Okay.
Right.
First, they laid everybody off during the 18 months of pandemic. Okay. Law firms laid people off. I had more attorneys contact me to learn real estate that were on the other side of the bank because they got laid off. So they're staffing up. They are staffing. It's happening, but it can't happen in any kind of fast manner. There's basically almost 1 million homes that are in forbearance, and they don't have the staff to foreclose on them, in a timely manner. Now, I disagree with you a little bit about the equity side because I look at short sales, so that's a mathematical equation. That is basically what do you owe minus what the home itself are, right? Well, in 18 months of forbearance, they didn't make any payments, so what they owed has gone up also. So people forget that. Black Knight's data shows that out of FHA loans, which 3% of all FHA loans in America, 3%, that's much higher than a normal 0.5%. 3% of all FHA loans in America are delinquent. They are potential foreclosures if there was staffing. Out of those, Black Knight has said that 29% are officially, quote, underwater. In other words, they can't put it on the market and sell it. That's a lot of homes. It's not a lot to move the market one bit, but it's really good for the investor rehabber, because we can get those houses, dirt cheap. I just got an approval 2 days ago from the bank on an FHA short sale for $59,000 in St. Louis, $59,000 for a home that's worth probably $200,000, and it actually doesn't even need to be painted. Okay, normally you want to paint them, right? So they're dumping these houses, out there, but it's not happening and not going to happen, very quickly. But actually, if you go back, I presented in October at the Mary event an interesting statistic. If you take 30 years of history of mortgages and people going into foreclosure, 30 years of foreclosure history, and you analyze the people behind it, and you take people that had 50% equity in their home, they could snap their finger and sell their home right away and avoid foreclosure. 40%, nearly half of all those people, failed to do it because of their life situation with it. So I think, that we will see, homes coming up because people that are health issues, lost their job, they don't make smart financial decisions. But, I think there's going to be a lot over the years, but like I said, they don't have the staffing to actually do it right now. And so anyway, that's just what I was going to say.
Yep, and I agree with you on the forbearance is the big unknown. Is will the lender do a workout with that buyer if they want it rather than foreclosing because they don't have the staff. And Some of them might want to get their money back because interest rates are rising. They've got a 3% loan that's out there, and they can reloan that money for 5% if they can sell that asset back to somebody in a short sale. They get their money back and can get a better return because of the interest rates going up. So, but yeah, the forbearance is the big question.
I agree with that completely, because it's, we're not talking a lot about those interest rates going up, but in the past month, I've seen 6 people get almost, immediate approvals on their short sales at huge discounts, because the just wants to get that money so they can go back and lend out, 10 to 15 times that amount at these higher interest rates.
Yep. That's one of my concerns with maybe not the next year, 2 years, maybe looking forward 5 years, is interest rates go to 5.5%, which is the average, right? I have a 3% interest rate and I want to go buy a bigger house, but that interest rate jump means I can't buy nearly as big of a house, even with the extra cash I've got from appreciation. I'm just going to stay here for another 5 years, pay this off a little bit more, and then hope interest rates go down, because for a group, the 18 to 30-year-olds, they've never seen interest rates over 5%, right? That they actually pay attention to. Even up to 35, they didn't pay attention to any interest rates until the last 5, 6, 7 years when they started to want to buy a house, because right out of college, most of the times they're renters. But is there going to be an actual listing shortage in 5 to 7 years because people can't or don't want to jump up in that interest rate and can't buy as much of a house because of that high interest rate on that new loan?
Good point. I think I'm still unstable. So am I still garbled?
No, you're good now.
Okay.
Are you unstable on Zoom or unstable in general?
Unstable both, my internet and me. So no, that was a great presentation, Kyle. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I'll put my email and my phone number in the chat if anybody wants to reach out to me. If you want to follow up with anything, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and more than happy to help you. I work with 5 Keller Williams offices around the city. So if you need a realtor somewhere, and I work with in Topeka as well, and I have nationwide resources. So if you need a realtor somewhere, let me know. I'm more than happy to connect you with somebody I know, or find somebody that I think will fit you well. So that you guys have, if you're buying something anywhere across the country now, right? Because you can do pretty much Airbnbs anywhere. If you're buying somewhere anywhere across the country and don't have a realtor there, let me know. I'll help you find a good one.
Awesome. Cool. Good deal. Anybody else have questions for Kyle or want to make a statement about what he said?
That was informative, Kyle. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
was listening in the background, but I was putting out fires at the same time. So if it wasn't on video, I was still listening to it. Everybody was walking around my office going, "Hey, man, that's pretty informative." Yeah. So there was other people in the office, a couple contractors, like, "Hey, what's that group?" I said, "Well, that's WinVestors."
Nice.
And that, and I said, "Well, that's Kyle." And like, "Hey, man, that's pretty informative." So they were standing here listening to you talk, and they thought that was pretty good. They said, "Man, that's a pretty good group you got there." I said, "I know. We've been in that group for several years. They're very good at what they do."
Well, and I could give you all the market stats, but that's no fun. Anybody can do that. I like to dig in and show some different unique perspectives and really like create graphs and charts myself that are more informative than just that market overview that KCIR puts out. So really dig in and find the different stuff and add value to you guys and give you some resources that you don't necessarily have to always talk to your realtor to get some value and find some things and be able to, you guys buy a lot of houses yourself. Here's some tools to share with those people you're buying those houses from. Hey, this is what's happening in the market without just me.
And you're definitely correct. So I have property in Nebraska, and I think people in Kansas City, they complain about things being a little bit steep until you go into a 3 and 2 and it's 385.
Right.
And They're like, what? In Nebraska? And I'm like, in Kearney, Nebraska, population 48,000, man. That's what it is. You guys are complaining about 200 and some change. How about 300 and some change? Same house, same exact footprint. And you guys are complaining about that in Overland Park. Okay.
I grew up in Nebraska.
I'm like, okay, I got a house in Grand Island, Nebraska. That now we bought that house, been about a half decade back, middle 100s. It's 428 right now. It went up that much, and we're talking just a few years. And then people around here are like, well, it's a terrible market, da-da-da. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a great market to be in. We're like in this umbrella here. It's like a big tent in Kansas City. It's all this opportunity you guys have, and we're sitting right in the middle of it. And it's a beautiful thing because we were able to buy stuff every single day. You go to like St. Louis, man, whole different market. Go up to Columbia and see if that same house is. It's just crazy what they're getting.
Yep. I grew up in Nebraska. My parents live in Hastings, and my sister and brother-in-law live in Hastings, which is just 15 miles south of Grand Island there. And my brother's been investing in stuff forever. And my parents just bought a house there, and they told me what they bought. I was like, really? It was that much? Just because there's just not that much inventory there and people they're moving to some of these places like Grand Island and Hastings and Kearney because they want that small town living. And as long as they have high-speed internet, they can do their job from wherever. Was it Google that was going to reduce people's pay if they worked remotely? Because those people were moving to low-cost states where they could buy for cash a house for what they sold their house in California for, and then get the same pay, live in a low-income area or a lower cost of living area, and work remotely. So
Rob says, my apologies, I missed most of the presentation. Would you care to speculate on if prices will grow in 22 or stay the same or go down?
I would say they're going to grow, but they're not going to go up quite as much as 2021. I'd say they're closer to early 2020, 2019, 6 to 10% appreciation.
Awesome. And Jane says, thank you so much for your amazing presentation. Lots of value. And Rob said, thank you for that. And David is telling Mark he's going to have to pay a lot of taxes. So you better consider a 1031 while you got it in there.
We just got it repo back. That was that one I've been crying about for what, a year and a half?
Yeah. No more crying now.
No more crying. It's a rental. It's going to be, and again, the rental market there is really strong because there's nobody, they can't find a house there. These people working for like Montford's making $25 to $30 an hour as a butcher. It's just crazy to me. It's like, wow, you guys are making some bank out there. Or work for Cabela's in Kearney. I mean, if you go to Kearney, there's like huge amount of industry in Kearney. And buying a house for $400,000 or $500,000 in Kearney all day long, $400,000 or $500,000. Here, again, complaining about 2 or 3, try 4 or 5, same house.
Yeah. So a couple other things that might impact investors. I do some stuff with the Kansas Association of Realtors, and they track what's happening in the legislature through our political action committee. And one of the bills that got introduced last week that doesn't have a title attached to it yet, but they're going to look heavily at wholesalers and making them be licensed realtors to do that same activity, because the public has had a lot of bad interactions with them and reached out to their representatives and to the attorney generals in the states. And Oklahoma did it about sometime last year. To do in essential what is a wholesaling activity, you would have to have a real estate license.
I have a question about that. How do you think brokers are going to respond to people doing the traditional wholesaling activity? Because it hasn't been a very good reception up to now with the licensees doing that.
That's a good question. I think some brokers will do it. I think the brokers that either charge a flat fee or have a cap where a certain percentage goes and then you get 100% after that are the ones that are going to attract those types of agents. The ones where you're always paying on every transaction probably, aren't going to get them because the wholesaler wants a set cost of things. So I think those are the brokers that are going to win are going to be those ones that have a fixed cost income, and they're going to set rules. They're going to, the state's going to set rules, and then the brokerage is going to say, to do this, this is how you do it. And technically all the funds would go through them.
Because we already can't do net listings. So I'm
Yeah.
concerned about how the wholesalers are going to respond to that with
Sure.
regard to being capped at what they can do.
Check the Oklahoma law because that's what they're basing the Kansas one on.
Okay.
I would be the best guide for that. I think, it's not, I guess, technically, yeah, that's where it's going to, like, what's the actual commission, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The whole net amount you're getting would be the commission.
Mm-hmm.
Is the way I would see that.
Yeah. So it's just going to be interesting to see how it gets around.
The way that contract would have to be written is the second one, your net one would have to have my commission. You've got it under contract for 50, you're wholesaling it for 65. That second contract would have to have a spot in it that says my commission is $15,000.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's more of a commission than a profit. Right.
It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. I'll look at those.
And brokerages might have a different split for the people that do that they're, like Keller Williams is normally 70-30, but for a wholesale transaction like that, they might only do 10%. I don't, and that cap that you're only going to pay us so much on everything and reduce that, because the nice thing is if you are a wholesaler, you're going to have access to the whole MLS to run your own comps and do everything else, because you'll have to be if you're with a brokerage that's a member of KCRR, you'll be a member of the MLS as well. So it's about an $800 a year cost to be a member of KCRR, plus whatever your office fees are and MLS. So not a huge expense if you're really doing it and making a lot of money, but it might get it's going to give the state some enforcement ability for the bad characters, which will allow everybody else that does it right to maybe have more opportunities because the bad characters are out of it. So yeah. The other thing that might impact Kansas is they're going to vote on medicinal marijuana, which could impact commercial in Kansas City and warehouse space, because all of a sudden there's going to be an influx of grow people, and especially if the federal government acts and takes marijuana or cannabis. I have to say cannabis. It's not marijuana because that's the bad term. If the federal government takes cannabis off the restricted list and allows people to ship it across the country, grow it in one place, ship it to other places, where's the most land to build $1 million square foot warehouse that you could grow a whole bunch of rotating crops and process it? It's the Midwest here. And we have decent enough weather that, it's not going to impact that. But so a couple of things that are possibly coming if on the cannabis in Kansas, if they don't act in this session, it's probably going to come up for a statewide referendum. And what I've been told is about 70% of the state favors this as medicinal. So it's probably coming to Kansas no matter what. We're already surrounded on 3 sides, and Nebraska is going to have it soon. We're missing out on tax revenue. We might as well just hop on board and make some tax money on it from the state of Kansas.
Interesting things to watch. That's
Yep.
for sure. All right. Thanks, Kyle. Anybody else got any questions or thoughts you want to bring to the table? Hey, everybody's quiet today.
Real quiet.
Either they're cold and under the blankets and in hibernation, or in shock from all the information. I don't know. All right. Well, thanks, Kyle. I appreciate you being here. It's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll have
Good
to
see
have
you guys.
some more.
Michelle,
Yes, Doug.
hey, can everybody kind of reveal what they pay realtors commission? Like what percentage?
That is a hot potato conversation, and anybody licensed is probably not going to say anything to you because it varies. There's not a flat fixed anything. It's a negotiation between you and your seller always.
Well,
And,
I've been pricing it where they're motivated too, but you can easily get them down to like 5%. I know I have. Some people probably get them down cheaper than that.
yep.
Completely depends on the services being provided and how your negotiations works out.
And brokerages can't set a price. The Department of Justice would like shut real estate down if we said there's a set price for anything. I see 5 to 7, depending on what, like Michelle said, what people are offering. A lot of times when I was selling more, I still have my license. I can still sell, but when I was selling more, for investors, I would do 5.5%, and give the co-op, the agent that brought the buyer, 3%. And I'd take a little bit less. But with investors, we get multiple listings per year, and buy sides on top of that. So I'd give a little bit of a discount to investors because of the repeat business.
And then I know agents that have been out there that have had a flat fee, say $5,000 on everything, irregardless of what its price point was. So it could be a good deal at higher price points. It's also helps them make their, pay for their services on the lower price points. So.
Yep. And I did set a floor. I anything under 50,000 was a flat 1,500.
Yeah.
I got to at least make a little money for dealing with those. And the lower price ones were always the ones that had the most issues.
Usually, yes. Rebecca says, how do we decide the price if we bought under the value price on the Fhfa Hpi calculator for the current value?
So that's just a guideline. That's where you start to, if you're going to sell, you really start to get that local market data. This is just kind of that website's just more of a guideline of, hey, this is what the appreciation has been on average. But then local market stats take over once you decide that, oh, look, I think I can get more than that.
Yeah. So go look at the comparables, Rebecca, in the local, kind of to hone it in. All right. Anybody else? Nothing. All right. Well, it's about 10 till. I am going to put a link in the chat, which is to our boot camp from last week for the Getting Fundable. So there's a link if you have not signed up for that. It is Thursday and Friday. So that is in the chat. And I'll have a couple more things going on this week to lead up to it for Friday and Saturday. It's 10 to 6 Central Time on Zoom. So if you want to attend, go to the link and sign up if you haven't already. And and Brian says, if you haven't listened to it, you can go back to last week's Facebook page and listen to it again. And I think Kim has posted some about it as well. Kim, are you still in here? Do you want to say anything? See if I can get everybody's faces back because I can't see everybody. Nope. Okay. All right. Well, good deal. Any other questions or thoughts? Comments? Otherwise, I'm going to give everybody back 10 minutes of their life. Also, if you want to have what's in the chat, the 3 dots next to the chat is where you can go and click and hit save chat in case you want that information. Anything that's been posted in there. So Kyle Bryan says we'll get you back in about 6 months to do this again. All right.
Sounds good. I'm more than happy to do it.
Thank you. All right. So we'll see everybody later. Stay warm and have a wonderful day.
You're a good man, Kyle.
Thanks, Doug. Good to hear you.